The smell of unwashed bodies and desperation filled the auction hall on Nexus Prime. Tae-ho pressed himself against the back wall, trying to make himself invisible. His worn jacket hung loose on his thin frame, and his boots had holes that let in the cold metal floor. He clutched his datapad with shaking hands. 500 credits. That was all he had left in the universe. The crowd around him was different. Wealthy traders in fine clothes, military officers with polished armor, crime bosses with their hired muscle. They all had money. They all had power. Tae-ho had neither. Next lot, shouted Broker Zolt from the stage. The fat Thraxian's forearms waved dramatically as his yellow eyes gleamed with greed. 2 beautiful specimens from the Valari homeworld. Guards pushed 2 figures onto the platform. Tae-ho's breath caught in his throat. They were sisters, he could tell immediately. Both had the same translucent blue skin that seemed to glow from within. Their large silver eyes held tears that looked like liquid starlight. The older one, maybe 20 in human years, wrapped her arms around the younger one protectively. Kira and Naya, Zolt announced. The elder sister can interface with any technology. The younger one sees the future. Think of the possibilities! The sisters pressed closer together. Their mouths moved, but no sound came out. Tae-ho realized they were speaking telepathically. The bond between them was visible in the way they moved as one person. We'll start the bidding at 1,000 credits, Zolt declared. Hands shot up around the room. The price climbed quickly. 2,000, 5,000, 10,000. Tae-ho watched in growing horror as the numbers rose beyond anything he could imagine. 15,000, called out a voice that made Tae-ho's blood freeze. General Vex stood near the front of the crowd. The hegemony warlord was a mountain of a being, covered in black armor that seemed to absorb light. His red eyes swept the room with cold calculation. Tae-ho had heard stories about Vex. Entire planets burned at his command, families torn apart for his amusement. I have plans for these 2, Vex said, his voice carrying easily through the hall. The older one will serve in my tech division. The younger one goes to my intelligence corps. Separately, of course. Can't have them coordinating. The sisters heard every word. The younger one, Naya, began to shake. Kira's glow dimmed as despair washed over her face. They knew what separation meant. Tae-ho knew too. His own sister had been 12 when the slavers took her. They promised to keep the family together, then sold them to different buyers on different worlds. Tae-ho never saw her again. The memory burned in his chest like acid. 20,000. Someone else bid. 25! Vex countered without hesitation. The room grew quiet. 25,000 credits was serious money. Most of the smaller bidders dropped out. Only the wealthiest remained in the game. Tae-ho looked at his datapad again. 500 credits, not even enough to buy decent food for a week. What could he possibly do against that kind of money? He thought about walking away. The smart thing would be to leave before he did something stupid. But every time he tried to move his feet, he saw the sisters' faces. He saw his own sister's face from 15 years ago. 30,000, Vex called out. The Thraxian broker was practically dancing with joy. 30,000 credits. Do I hear 35? Silence fell over the hall. Even the crime bosses were backing down. 30,000 was General Vex money. Nobody wanted to make an enemy of the hegemony over 2 slaves. Going once, Zolt announced. Kira and Naya held each other tighter. Their silver eyes closed as they accepted their fate. Soon they would be ripped apart and sent to opposite ends of the galaxy. The telepathic bond that made them whole would be broken forever. Going twice, Tae-ho's hand started to rise before his brain caught up. This was insane. He had nothing to offer, but he couldn't watch this happen. Not again. 500 credits, he called out in a voice that cracked with emotion. The entire hall turned to stare at him. Laughter erupted from multiple corners. Even some of the guards chuckled. Broker Zolt's 4 eyes narrowed as he spotted the shabby human in the back. Sir, the current bid is 30,000 credits, Zolt said with barely concealed contempt. Perhaps you misheard? I heard fine, Tae-ho said, stepping forward through the crowd. People moved aside, some still laughing. 500 credits. General Vex turned his massive head to study this new annoyance. His red eyes burned with growing irritation. Human, you're wasting everyone's time. The bid stands at 30,000, Zolt announced firmly. Going once again. Wait, Tae-ho said, pushing through the crowd until he reached the front. His heart hammered against his ribs, but he kept walking. I want to make a different kind of bid. Credits only, Zolt snapped. This isn't a charity auction. What if I offered something worth more than 30,000 credits? Tejo asked. The laughter died away. Even Vex looked curious now. Tejo reached into his jacket and pulled out a small data chip. His hands were steady now, even though his world was about to change forever. This contains the location of a precursor ship, he said clearly. The heart of eternity. Lost for 300 years. The silence was complete now. Precursor technology was worth more than entire star systems. Ships, planets, even wars had been fought over single precursor artifacts. Broker Zolt's greed won out over his caution. You're lying. If you had that information, you'd be rich already. I've been looking for a crew brave enough to help me salvage it, Tejo said. Maybe I just found one. He looked directly at the sisters on the platform. Kira's eyes had opened wide with surprise. Naya was staring at him with the intense focus of someone whose precognitive gift was showing her something important. Impossible, General Vex snarled. No human scavenger has that kind of information. My mentor, Captain Dong Wook, found the ship before he died, Tejo said. He passed the coordinates to me. I've been too poor to do anything about it. Zolt's forearms trembled with excitement. Precursor ships were the ultimate prize for any broker. The commission alone would make him wealthy beyond imagination. What exactly are you proposing? The Thraxian asked carefully. Tejo took a deep breath. Once he said this, there would be no going back. A challenge, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Give me 1 month to retrieve 3 precursor artifacts from the heart of eternity. If I succeed, the sisters go free. If I fail, he looked directly at General Vex. If I fail, you get me and the ship location as well as the sisters. The hall erupted in excited chatter. This was better than any auction. This was entertainment. General Vex smiled slowly, showing teeth like daggers. Deal, he said. The contract signing took place in Broker Zolt's private office, a gaudy room filled with stolen treasures from a dozen worlds. Tejo sat across from General Vex, trying not to show how badly his hands were shaking. The hegemony warlord looked amused, like a cat playing with a mouse before eating it. 1 month, Vex repeated as he pressed his armored thumb to the contract pad. To find a ship that may not even exist, retrieve 3 artifacts that may not be there, and return alive from a mission that will probably kill you. That's the deal, Tejo said, adding his own thumbprint to seal his fate. Broker Zolt rubbed his forehands together with glee. Magnificent! The betting pools are already forming. The odds against you are quite impressive, human. Kira and Naya stood silently in the corner, still wearing the slave collars that would kill them if they tried to run. They had been watching Tejo with expressions he couldn't read. Did they think he was brave or just stupid? Of course, General Vex said casually. I'll be sending Commander Thane to observe your mission. To ensure there's no cheating, a tall figure stepped out of the shadows. Commander Thane wore the same black armor as his master, but his face was visible beneath his helmet. Pale skin stretched tight over sharp bones and his dark eyes held no warmth at all. I'll be watching very carefully, Thane said in a voice like grinding metal. Tejo nodded. He had expected this. Vex wouldn't let him out of sight, not with precursor technology at stake. Fine, but no interference until the month is up. Agreed, Vex said. Though I suspect interference won't be necessary. 20 minutes later, Tejo was walking through the cramped corridors of Nexus Prime's docking section, with 2 alien sisters following behind him. The slave collars had been replaced with tracking bracelets that would explode if they left the system without permission. It was a small improvement. You're either very brave or very stupid, Kira said suddenly. Her voice was musical like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Probably stupid, Tejo admitted, but I couldn't watch him split you 2 up. Naya spoke for the first time since the auction. My gift showed me fragments of the future when you made your bid. I saw fire and darkness, but also hope. You're going to try to save us even if it kills you. Nobody's dying on my watch, Tejo said with more confidence than he felt. They reached Docking Bay 17, where the Wanderer waited for them. Tejo's ship was 20 years old and showed every day of it. Hull patches covered old weapon hits. The landing gear groaned under the ship's weight. Paint peeled off in long strips, revealing the bare metal underneath. This is your ship? Kira asked, trying to hide her dismay. She's not pretty, but she flies, Tejo said defensively. The airlock opened with a hiss of escaping air. Inside, the ship was even worse. Exposed wiring ran along the walls. The air recycling system made grinding noises. Everything smelled like oil and old sweat. Tay-ho, a voice called from the engine room. That you? Please tell me you didn't buy anything expensive. The hyperdrive is held together with prayer and spare parts. A woman emerged from the maintenance shaft, wiping grease off her hands. Bomb was short and stocky with calloused fingers and suspicious eyes. She had been with Tay-ho for 3 years, ever since her last ship exploded around her. She took one look at the sisters and groaned. Please tell me you didn't blow our last credits on passengers, she said. It's complicated, Tay-ho said. With you, it's always complicated. Bomb noticed the tracking bracelets and her expression grew serious. How complicated? We have 1 month to find the Heart of Eternity and bring back 3 precursor artifacts, or General Vex gets all of us as his personal property. Bomb stared at him for a long moment. Then she started laughing. Not happy laughter, but the kind that comes when things get so bad you can't cry anymore. The Heart of Eternity, she repeated. The ghost ship. The phantom treasure that every salvage crew in the galaxy has been hunting for 3 centuries. Captain Dong-wook found it, Tay-ho said quietly. The laughter stopped. Bomb's expression softened slightly. She had known Dong-wook too, before age and bad luck caught up with him. If the old captain said he found something, it was probably true. Where's Wu-jin? Tay-ho asked. Navigation deck plotting our next job, which apparently just changed dramatically. They found Wu-jin hunched over the navigation console, surrounded by star charts and mathematical calculations. He was barely 20 with eager eyes and quick hands. Most importantly, he was the only navigator willing to work for the wages Tay-ho could afford. Captain, Wu-jin jumped up when he saw them. I found 3 possible salvage sites in the outer rim. Low security, good profit potential. Change of plans, Tay-ho said. He pulled out the data chip that contained Dong-wook's final gift. Plot a course for these coordinates. Wu-jin inserted the chip and watched as his console filled with navigation data. His eyes grew wide as he recognized the stellar formation. This is in the Forbidden Zone, he said softly, the area where space itself is unstable. Dozens of ships have gone missing there. That's why nobody's found the Heart of Eternity yet, Tay-ho said. Kira stepped forward to look at the navigation display. I've heard stories about precursor ships. They're supposed to be protected by automated defenses that can destroy entire fleets. The defenses won't activate unless we try to steal something, Tay-ho said. He hoped that was true. We're not thieves. We're just borrowing 3 small artifacts to save your lives. Naya suddenly grabbed her sister's arm. Her eyes had gone completely silver the way they did when her gift activated. What do you see? Kira asked urgently. Darkness, Naya whispered. Something vast and ancient sleeping in the void. But also, consciousness, the ship isn't empty. Something still lives inside it. Precursor survivors? Wu-jin asked excitedly. No, Naya said, her voice distant. Something else. Something that's been waiting for a very long time. Bomb crossed her arms and looked at Tay-ho with an expression that clearly said he was insane. So let me understand this. We're flying into a space anomaly to board a ghost ship protected by ancient weapons and inhabited by unknown entities. All to steal artifacts from an extinct civilization that was advanced enough to reshape matter with their thoughts. That's about right, Tay-ho said. And if we fail, we all become the property of the most violent warlord in this sector. Also correct? Bomb sighed deeply and headed for the engine room. I'll get the hyperdrive ready. If we're going to die horribly, we might as well do it in style. Wu-jin was already inputting course calculations. His young face was bright with excitement. The Forbidden Zone, he murmured. We're actually going to the Forbidden Zone. Kira and Naya stood together near the navigation console, watching the star charts scroll past. Their tracking bracelets blinked steadily, counting down the seconds until their freedom or their doom. Why are you doing this? Kira asked Tay-ho quietly. You don't know us. We're not even the same species. Tay-ho thought about his sister lost somewhere in the galaxy. He thought about all the families torn apart by greed and power. He thought about the way the sisters had held each other on the auction platform, knowing they were about to be separated forever. Because somebody has to, he said simply. The Wanderer's engines came online with a rumble that shook the entire ship. Warning lights flashed as various systems protested the sudden activity. Through the viewport, Tay-ho could see Commander Thane's sleek warship moving into position to follow them. Course laid in, Wu-jin reported, ready for hyperspace jump. Take us out, Teho ordered. The stars stretched into lines as the Wanderer jumped into hyperspace, carrying them toward a legend that might save them all or destroy them completely. In the navigation display, the countdown timer began. 29 days, 23 hours, and 57 minutes until General Vex claimed his prize. The Forbidden Zone lived up to its name. Space itself seemed wrong here, twisted into shapes that hurt to look at. Stars appeared in impossible colors, and distant galaxies bent like reflections in broken glass. The Wanderer's instruments went crazy, showing readings that made no scientific sense. "Sensors are useless," Wujin reported, his voice tight with concentration. "The navigation computer keeps trying to divide by zero." Teho gripped his command chair as the ship shuddered through another wave of spatial distortion. "Stay on course. The coordinates should put us right on top of the heart of eternity. If it exists," Baum muttered from the engineering station. "And if we don't get torn apart by whatever's making space do this." Kira sat at the communications console, her blue hands dancing over alien controls she somehow understood perfectly. Her technological gift let her interface with any system, no matter how foreign. Right now she was trying to make sense of the strange energy patterns surrounding them. "There's something massive nearby," she said suddenly. "The distortions are coming from a single point about 50 kilometers ahead." Naya stood beside her sister, her silver eyes closed in concentration. Her precognitive abilities were stronger here, as if the twisted space amplified her gift. "I can feel it," she whispered. "Ancient minds sleeping in crystal dreams. They're not dead, just elsewhere. There." Wujin pointed at the main display. The heart of eternity materialized out of the spatial fog like a ghost becoming solid. It was beautiful in a way that made their hearts ache. The ship stretched for kilometers, its hull made of some crystalline material that seemed to contain tiny stars. Flowing lines covered its surface in patterns that suggested movement even though the ship was perfectly still. "My God," Baum breathed. "It's real." The precursor vessel hung motionless in space, surrounded by a field of debris from ships that had tried to reach it over the centuries. Twisted metal and scattered bones floated in the void, warning of the dangers ahead. "Automated defenses," Teho said grimly. "Just like the stories said." As if responding to his words, points of light began to activate along the ancient ship's hull. Weapon systems that had slept for millennia came online, tracking the tiny human vessel that dared to approach. "They're targeting us," Kira reported, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "Hold position," Teho ordered. "Don't make any aggressive moves." Energy built around the precursor weapons, growing brighter with each passing second. The entire crew held their breath, waiting for the moment when ancient fire would turn them to vapor. Then the weapons powered down. "What happened?" Wujin asked in confusion. Naya opened her silver eyes and looked directly at Teho. "It scanned our minds. It knows why we're here. The ship approves of sacrifice for others." "The precursors valued that trait," Kira added. "Before they transcended physical existence, they struggled with the same emotions we do. Greed, fear, selfishness. They learned to prize those who could rise above such feelings." A docking bay opened in the heart of eternity's side, revealing a chamber filled with soft golden light. The message was clear. They were invited inside. "I don't like this," Baum said as she maneuvered the Wanderer toward the alien docking bay. "Ships that think for themselves make me nervous." The moment their ship touched down, the bay sealed itself and filled with breathable atmosphere. Environmental controls that had been waiting for centuries activated automatically, adjusting temperature and air composition for their biological needs. They suited up in their best protective gear, though Teho suspected it wouldn't help much if the ship decided to kill them. As they prepared to leave the safety of their vessel, Commander Thane's warship appeared in the distance, maintaining position just outside the defense perimeter. "He's watching," Kira observed. "Let him watch," Teho said. "We have work to do." The interior of the Heart of Eternity was even more magnificent than the outside. Corridors curved in impossible directions, their walls covered with flowing script that seemed to move when viewed directly. Soft light emanated from the crystalline structure itself, providing gentle illumination that somehow never cast shadows. "The ship is showing us the way," Naya said as passages opened before them and sealed behind them. "It wants us to reach the central core." They followed the path deeper into the vessel, past chambers filled with strange machinery and rooms that might have been living quarters for beings who no longer needed physical forms. Everywhere they looked, technology beyond human understanding waited silently for commands that would never come. There, Kira pointed ahead to a vast chamber at the ship's heart. The core room was enormous, its ceiling lost in crystalline formations that pulsed with inner light. At the center sat 3 pedestals, each holding a sphere of swirling energy that hurt to look at directly. These were the memory cores Taiho needed, containing the compressed knowledge of entire civilizations. But between them and their goal stood something unexpected. A consciousness interface. Kira breathed in wonder. The ship wants someone to connect with it directly. The interface was a pillar of living crystal that rose from the floor like a frozen waterfall. Touching it would allow complete mental connection with the heart of eternity's vast intelligence, but the process was dangerous. Most biological minds couldn't handle that much information without burning out completely. "I'll do it," Taiho said immediately. "No," Kira stepped forward. "My gift makes me the logical choice. I can interface with any technology. We can share the burden," Naya added. "Our telepathic bond will let us distribute the mental load between 3 minds instead of 1. Before anyone could object, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The golden light shifted to red as warning symbols appeared on every surface. "Commander Thane is moving," Wujin reported, checking his portable scanner. "Multiple ships coming in fast." Vex must have sent backup, Taiho realized. "They're going to try to take the ship by force." The Heart of Eternity's defenses activated in response to the new threat, but centuries of sleep had weakened them. Energy weapons that should have vaporized entire fleets now only managed to damage a few of the attacking vessels. "The ship is asking for help," Naya said urgently. "It needs living consciousness to strengthen its defenses." "How long do we have?" Taiho asked. Wujin checked his scanner again. 20 minutes before they break through the outer defenses." Taiho looked at the memory cores so close but still out of reach. Then he looked at Kira and Naya, who had trusted him with their lives. Finally, he looked at Bom and Wujin, who had followed him into this impossible situation. "We do this together," he decided. "All of us connect to the interface at once." "That's insane," Bom protested. "The feedback could kill us all." "Maybe," Taiho admitted. "But we're dead anyway if Vex gets his hands on us. At least this way we go down fighting." They joined hands around the crystal interface, human and alien fingers intertwining. Kira placed her palm against the smooth surface first, gasping as the connection formed. Naya joined her sister, their telepathic bond glowing brighter as the ship's consciousness touched their minds. Taiho, Bom, and Wujin completed the circle, their human determination adding strength to the alien interface. The moment their consciousness merged with the heart of eternity, everything changed. They were no longer 5 separate beings but part of something vast and ancient. The ship's memory opened before them like an infinite library, showing them the rise and fall of the precursor civilization. They saw wars fought with weapons that could crack planets, and they saw the moment when an entire species chose to transcend physical existence rather than destroy themselves with their own power. But most importantly, they felt the ship's approval. The precursors had spent their final years searching for beings worthy of inheriting their legacy. They had found candidates among many species, but none had shown the pure selflessness that drove Taiho to risk everything for strangers. The ship's weapon systems came fully online, powered by the combined will of 5 minds that refused to surrender. Ancient energy cannons that could have destroyed small moons focused their fire on the attacking fleet. Commander Thane's ships died in brilliant flashes of light, their armor no match for precursor technology at full power. Only Thane's command vessel survived, its superior shields allowing it to retreat to a safe distance. As the connection faded, Taiho found himself holding 3 memory cores that pulsed with warm light. The ship had given them freely, recognizing the nobility of their cause. "We did it," Wujin said in amazement, but Naya's silver eyes had gone wide with new visions. "This is only the beginning," she whispered. "The ship has shown me what these cores really contain. They're not just artifacts, they're keys to awakening others like this ship, scattered across the galaxy." Taiho looked at the cores in his hands and felt the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders. They had come here to save 2 alien sisters, but they might have found something that could change the balance of power throughout the galaxy. The question was, what would they do with it? The journey back to Nexus Prime should have been simple. They had the 3 memory cores that would buy Kira and Naya's freedom. The deal with General Vex was clear and binding. But as the Wanderer limped through hyperspace with damaged systems and an exhausted crew, Taeho couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get much worse. 18 hours until we reach Nexus Prime, Woojin reported from the navigation console. Dark circles under his eyes showed how the mental link with the heart of eternity had drained him. They were all feeling the effects of connecting with something so vast and ancient. Kira sat at the engineering station, her technological gift allowing her to help Bomb repair the damage from their escape. The ship's weapons had protected them from Thane's attack, but the strain of channeling precursor energy had overloaded half their systems. The hyperdrive is holding together with hope and stubbornness, Bomb announced from the engine room. We'll make it to Nexus Prime, but don't ask me to jump anywhere else without major repairs. Naya stood by the viewport, watching the stars stream past in hyperspace. Her precognitive abilities had been enhanced by the connection with the ship, and she saw fragments of possible futures swirling around them like leaves in a storm. They're planning something, she said suddenly. General Vex isn't going to honor the deal. What do you see? Taeho asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Multiple timelines, but they all lead to the same place. He takes the artifacts and keeps us anyway. The contract means nothing to him. Taeho had expected this. Men like Vex didn't become powerful by keeping their word to people they considered beneath them. The warlord would claim the memory cores, then find some excuse to break the agreement. They would be slaves after all, and the precursor knowledge would be used to strengthen the hegemony's grip on the galaxy. So what do we do? Woojin asked. Taeho looked at the 3 memory cores sitting on the table before him. Each one contained the compressed knowledge of an entire precursor civilization. The ship had shown him what they really were. Keys that could awaken other sleeping vessels scattered throughout the galaxy. Technology that could change everything. We give him exactly what he deserves, Taeho said quietly. They dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Nexus Prime system to find a welcoming committee waiting for them. General Vex had positioned 3 battle cruisers around the space station, making it clear that there would be no escape this time. Incoming transmission, Kira reported. General Vex's armored face appeared on the main screen, his red eyes burning with satisfaction. Welcome back, human. I trust your mission was successful? We have your artifacts, Taeho replied carefully. 3 precursor memory cores as agreed. Excellent. You'll deliver them to my flagship immediately, along with the alien sisters, of course. The deal was that they go free if we brought back the artifacts. Vex's laugh was like grinding metal. The deal has changed. I've decided that beings capable of interfacing with precursor technology are too valuable to release. They'll serve the hegemony for the rest of their lives. Kira and Naya stood close together, their faces showing the despair of people who had hoped for freedom, only to have it snatched away. The tracking bracelets on their wrist blinked steadily, ready to explode if they tried to resist. You can't do that, Woojin protested. There was a contract. Contracts are for equals, Vex said dismissively. You are insects. I am a general of the hegemony. The only reason you're still alive is because I need those artifacts intact. Taeho felt rage building in his chest, but he forced his voice to stay calm. Fine, we'll dock with your flagship and transfer the cores. Wise decision, Vex said before cutting the transmission. As the Wanderer approached the massive battlecruiser, Taeho gathered his crew in the common area. The memory cores sat on the table between them, pulsing with soft light that seemed to respond to their emotions. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I thought we could trust him to keep his word. You tried, Kira said, touching his shoulder gently. That's more than anyone else has ever done for us. It's not over, Taeho said firmly. The heart of eternity showed me something when we connected. These cores aren't just storage devices. They're communication nodes. They can transmit information across the entire galaxy instantly. He picked up one of the cores, feeling its warmth pulse against his skin. Vex wants precursor technology? Let's give him more than he can handle. The docking procedure went smoothly. General Vex was too confident to expect any tricks from a beaten salvage crew. His soldiers escorted them through the flagship's corridors to a secure briefing room, where the transfer would take place. The room was filled with hegemony officers, all eager to see the legendary precursor artifacts. General Vex sat at the head of a long table, his massive frame making the reinforced chair look fragile. Commander Thane stood behind him, his pale face showing anger at being defeated by the ancient ship. "The memory cores," Vex demanded, extending one armored hand. Teho placed the 3 spheres on the table. They pulsed brighter as they sensed the greed and malice in the room, their light taking on an angry red tinge. "Magnificent," Vex breathed, reaching for the nearest core. "I wouldn't touch them directly," Teho warned. "The precursors built in safeguards against unworthy users." Vex paused, his hand hovering over the artifact. "What kind of safeguards?" "Mental feedback. The cores scan the user's intentions. If they detect evil or selfishness, the feedback can burn out a person's brain in seconds." It was a lie, but a convincing one. The precursors had been advanced enough to build such protections, and Vex was greedy enough to believe they would. "Then how do we access the information?" Commander Thane asked. "You need someone with the right mental patterns," Teho explained. "Someone willing to sacrifice for others." The precursors were very specific about that. Vex's red eyes narrowed with suspicion, but his greed won out over caution. The alien sisters will interface with them. Their telepathic abilities should provide protection against feedback. "No," Kira said firmly. "We won't help you use precursor technology for conquest." "You'll do as you're ordered," Vex snarled. "Or I'll activate those bracelets and watch you die slowly." Naya stepped forward, her silver eyes meeting the warlord's burning gaze without flinching. "You can kill us, but you can't make us cooperate. The cores will remain sealed." Vex raised his hand to activate the bracelets, but Teho spoke first. "Wait," he said. "I'll do it." "Teho, no," Bomb protested. "You don't know what those things will do to your mind." "It's the only way," he replied. "Vex gets his artifacts, and hopefully the feedback kills me quickly." What the hegemony officers didn't know was that Teho had already interfaced with precursor technology. The memory cores recognized him as worthy, and more importantly, they were still connected to the vast network that linked every sleeping ship in the galaxy. Teho placed his hands on the 3 cores simultaneously. They flared with brilliant light as the connection formed, and suddenly every screen in the room came alive with data streams. Star maps showing the locations of hundreds of precursor vessels, technical specifications for weapons that could shatter planets, the complete history of a civilization that had mastered space and time. "Incredible," Vex whispered, watching centuries of knowledge flow past his eyes. But Teho wasn't just accessing the information, he was broadcasting it. Through the core's quantum communication network, he transmitted everything to every independent captain, freedom fighter, and rebel cell in the known galaxy. The locations of sleeping precursor ships, the access codes needed to awaken them, the knowledge that would let ordinary people challenge tyrants with weapons beyond imagination. "What are you doing?" Commander Thane demanded, noticing that the data was being transmitted beyond the ship. "Exactly what humans do best," Teho said through gritted teeth as the mental strain grew overwhelming. "Sharing." General Vex realized what was happening and lunged for the cores, trying to break the connection. But the moment his armored fingers touched the precursor artifacts, feedback slammed through his nervous system. The cores had scanned his mind and found nothing but cruelty and greed. They rejected him with force that sent him flying across the room. Alarms began blaring throughout the flagship as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Precursor ships were awakening. Ancient weapons were coming online in the hands of oppressed peoples and rebel fleets. The balance of power that had kept the hegemony in control for centuries was crumbling in real time. Teho maintained the connection until every piece of data had been transmitted, then collapsed as the cores went dark. Around the galaxy, the age of tyrants was ending, one awakened ship at a time, and in a briefing room on a hegemony flagship, a human salvage captain smiled as he watched his enemies realize that they had just lost everything. The chaos started small and spread like wildfire across the galaxy. On a mining world in the Outer Rim, enslaved workers used newly awakened precursor technology to shatter their chains and drive off their overseers. In the core systems, rebel fleets that had been hiding in asteroid fields suddenly possessed weapons that could challenge hegemony dreadnoughts. On 1,000 worlds, the oppressed looked up at the stars and saw hope instead of fear. Teho watched it all unfold from the medical bay of General Vex's flagship, where he was recovering from the mental strain of interfacing with 3 precursor cores simultaneously. His head felt like someone had filled it with broken glass, but he was alive. More importantly, Kira and Naya were alive too. The Velhari sisters sat beside his bed, their tracking bracelets now nothing more than useless metal circles. The first thing the awakened precursor technology had done was broadcast disabling codes for every slave device in the known galaxy. Freedom had come to millions in the span of a few hours. The reports keep coming in, Kira said, reading from a datapad she had liberated from a hegemony officer. 17 precursor ships have awakened in the last 6 hours. 3 hegemony sectors are in full revolt. General Vex is locked in his quarters screaming at anyone who will listen, Naya added with satisfaction. His officers are starting to surrender rather than fight battles they can't win. Bom and Wu Jin entered the medical bay, both grinning despite their exhaustion. They had spent the last several hours helping coordinate the peaceful surrender of the flagship's crew. Most of the soldiers were just following orders, and they were quick to switch sides when it became clear the hegemony was collapsing. The Nexus Prime Council wants to negotiate, Bom reported. Turns out they're very interested in staying on the good side of the people who just armed half the galaxy with ancient superweapons. And Commander Thane? Tejo asked. Escaped in a shuttle before the ship surrendered, Wu Jin said. But his fleet is scattered. Most of his captains decided they'd rather live than die for a lost cause. Through the medical bay's viewport, Tejo could see the results of their victory. Dozens of ships had arrived at Nexus Prime in the last few hours, but not to attack. They were refugees, freed slaves, and independent captains who wanted to thank the crew of the Wanderer. The space around the station looked like a celebration rather than a war zone. There's something else, Kira said hesitantly. The precursor network is still active. The cores we used created a permanent link to every awakened ship. If we wanted to, we could coordinate the new fleet. Guide them. Make sure the technology is used responsibly. Tejo considered this carefully. The power to command hundreds of precursor vessels was tempting, but it was also dangerous. Power like that could corrupt anyone, turning liberators into the very tyrants they had fought against. No, he said finally. That's not what we're about. The whole point was to give people the freedom to choose their own destiny. We're not going to become their new masters. But someone needs to help organize things, Naya protested. Without coordination, this could turn into chaos. Then we help organize, Tejo agreed. But as advisors, not rulers, we share what we learned from the Heart of Eternity, then step back and let others make their own decisions. Over the following weeks, that's exactly what they did. The Wanderer became a traveling embassy, visiting newly awakened precursor ships and helping their crews understand the technology they had inherited. Tejo and his team taught them about the mental safeguards that prevented the weapons from being used for conquest or oppression. They showed them how to interface with the ancient systems safely. Most importantly, they helped establish the Precursor Accords, a set of principles that all users of the ancient technology agreed to follow. No using precursor weapons against civilian populations. No conquering worlds that didn't want to be conquered. No hoarding the technology to create new tyrannies. The hegemony didn't collapse overnight, but it weakened rapidly as sector after sector declared independence. General Vex retreated to his core worlds, ranting about human treachery and alien conspiracies. His empire, built on fear and superior firepower, crumbled when ordinary people gained access to weapons that made his fleets obsolete. 3 months after the awakening, Tejo stood on the observation deck of a liberated space station, watching construction crews from a dozen species work together to build something new. The galaxy was far from perfect, but it was better than it had been. Regrets? Kira asked, joining him at the viewport. None, Tejo said honestly. We saved your lives, freed millions of slaves, and toppled the worst tyranny in known space. Not bad for a month's work. Naya appeared on his other side, her silver eyes bright with visions of possible futures. The timeline streams are stabilizing, she reported. I see trade routes opening between species that haven't spoken in centuries. Colonies being established on worlds that were too dangerous to settle before. Children growing up free who would have been born into slavery. What about threats? Tejo asked. Not everyone is going to be happy about the change. General Vex is gathering what's left of his forces for one final attack, Naya said. But he's facing rebels with precursor weapons now. His defeat is certain, and after that? Peace, Naya said simply. Not perfect peace, but better than what came before. Species learning to work together instead of conquering each other. The galaxy healing from centuries of war. Bom's voice crackled over the station's communication system. Captain, we've got visitors. A delegation from the inner systems wants to discuss trade agreements. On our way, Tejo replied. As they walked through corridors filled with beings from dozens of worlds, all working together toward common goals, Tejo reflected on how much had changed. He had started this journey as a broke salvage operator, trying to save two alien sisters from slavery. Now he was helping to reshape galactic civilization. Do you think the precursors planned this? Kira asked as they entered the conference room where delegates from 50 star systems waited to meet them. Maybe, Tejo said, or maybe they just knew that someday, someone would come along who cared more about doing the right thing than personal gain. The delegation rose to greet them, representatives of species that had been enemies for generations now sitting at the same table. They wanted to discuss everything from trade routes to mutual defense agreements to cultural exchange programs. But before the formal negotiations began, an elderly delegate from the mining world of Kepler-7 stood up. She was human, her face marked by years of hard labor under hegemony rule. Before we talk about treaties and trade, she said in a voice that carried across the room, I want to say something on behalf of every world that was freed by the awakening. Thank you. All of you. You gave us back our future. The room erupted in applause from beings with different languages, different customs, and different biologies, but united in their gratitude. Tejo felt tears in his eyes as he realized that this was what the precursors had really left behind. Not just weapons and technology, but the chance for the galaxy to be better than it was. Later that evening, as the negotiations continued in smaller groups, Tejo found himself alone on the observation deck again. The stars looked different now, brighter somehow, as if reflecting the hope that was spreading across the galaxy. Credits for your thoughts, a familiar voice said behind him. He turned to see Kira and Naya approaching, no longer wearing the simple clothes of freed slaves but the practical uniforms of the Precursor Advisory Council they had helped establish. Just thinking about how far we've come, Tejo said. 6 months ago I had 500 credits and a broken-down ship. Now look at us. You still have 500 credits and a broken-down ship, Bomb pointed out as she joined the group. Some things never change. The important things have changed, Wu Jin added, appearing from the corridor with a data pad full of navigation requests. Captains from across the galaxy want us to help them understand their new ships. We could be traveling and teaching for years. Tejo looked at his crew, his friends, his family. They had all risked everything for strangers and in doing so had found something more valuable than any treasure. Purpose. Then that's what we'll do, he decided. The Wanderer may be old and ugly, but she's taken us this far. I think she's got a few more miracles in her. As if responding to his words, the ancient ship's running lights flickered in the docking bay below, ready for whatever adventure waited among the stars. In the distance, barely visible against the cosmic background, the wreckage of General Vex's final fleet drifted silent and dark. The Tyrant himself had been captured by rebels using the very precursor technology he had tried to monopolize. Justice, it seemed, had a sense of irony, but Tejo wasn't thinking about fallen enemies. He was thinking about the future, about the countless worlds that were now free to choose their own destiny. He was thinking about two alien sisters who would never be separated again, and about the bonds that could form between strangers when one of them was willing to risk everything for the other. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers and wonders in equal measure, but for the first time in centuries, it was also full of hope. And sometimes Tejo reflected as he watched the stars shine with renewed brightness. Hope was the most powerful weapon of all.